In life, we encounter people every day, all of whom have stories to share. We rarely take the time to ask people their personal stories, many of which will touch, move, and inspire us in some way. Matt has a passion for making authentic connections and learning about people from all walks of life. He has lived a life of giving back to the community and making a difference in people's lives. Are you ready to meet fascinating people and hear some inspiring stories? The Matt Hilton Show will introduce you to a world of possibilities you never knew existed. Sit back, be present, and enjoy. Here's your host, Matt Hilton.
Hey everyone, Matt Hilton here, the host of the Matt Hilton Show. Thanks for tuning in today. Today's guest is a friend of mine, and she's an international speaker and a comedian. You don't want to miss this show. Stay tuned for a word from our sponsor.
With almost 20 years of real estate experience in the North Texas area, the professional realtors at Hilton Realty Advisors have helped over 500 clients with their housing needs. Hilton Realty Advisors covers all areas of real estate: buying, selling, building, investing, and renting. We deliver the keys to homeownership to all through integrity, love, and joy. Call us today for all of your real estate needs.
Hey everyone, Matt Hilton here, the host of the Matt Hilton Show. Thanks for tuning in today. Today's guest is a recent acquaintance, and I consider her now a friend of mine. And she is a comic, a speaker, and she's a performance coach. Get ready to laugh a lot today because I laugh with Elaine Williams, and I'm sure you will too. Elaine, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Well, thank you, Matt. I'm excited to be here.
Such a pleasure. Such a pleasure. So just to get this out, because there was a connection made on my show that just recently aired. The guest that I interviewed, she was your choral director. Is that right, in high school?
Yes, Marca Lee Bircher. And
yes.
This woman she was just so amazing. She had these famous musicals, and people would come to Woodrow just so they could work with her. And we had a show choir called Variations. We were best in Texas, and we went to this big festival in California. And I just love Miss Bircher. She was really a role model for me because my mom had taken off to Europe, and my stepmother was a little bit crazy. And so Miss Bircher was like a mom. And she was like that for lots of people.
Yeah. And you mentioned to me that she saved your life. How did she save your life?
Well, okay, this is not the funny part. So my stepmother drank a lot, and we had this altercation at my high school, a physical fight. And I was just defending myself, and and it was very traumatic. And I had to go to the principal's office, and my stepmother was saying I had started it, and that was not true. And it was just a really devastating day.
Right.
And Ms. Bircher knew what was happening at home, and she came and took me, and we went back to the principal's office, and she advocated for me. And at the time, there was really no other adults able to do that.
Yeah.
And so that was one time. And then I went to visit my mother in Europe, and she was having a little bit of a midlife crisis. So it was wild. I was 16 and it was really hard at home. And so I thought, why should I even go back? Let me just stay in Europe. But I thought, you know what? I want to work with Miss Bircher. And she's really the only reason I came back to Texas. And I know had I stayed in Europe, I probably would have ended up in a very bad, trafficked or something. Because it was just a really crazy time in my family. And so I told Miss Bircher both of those stories and how much she saved me. And I reminded her again in December when I saw her. And her son, Preston, was like, I had no idea. And I was like, your mother was amazing. And I was just all choked up. But I know that's a little heavy. But, that's what a teacher can do for kids, and she multiplied me times thousands probably, because she was just that person who just gave and gave and gave and was rehearsing late at night. And, it was not easy, all the things she did, but that's just who she is,
That is who she is. That's who she is. And thank you for telling us that because I feel that it's important for people to understand the impact that some of my guests that I have on the show, they don't toot their own horn. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
They don't.
Yep.
They're modest, right? And so I appreciate you doing that because I know that Marca Lee is an influencer. She has impacted hundreds, probably thousands of lives. And you are an example of someone that she did have that positive impact on. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So how
It's a little heavy.
yeah, well, it is what it is. It's life, right? And that's where you have gotten some inspiration from being a comedian, if I understand it correctly, is from your life, right? And so tell us a little bit, how did you become a comedian?
Well, when I was 6, I'm just kidding. So, I'm going to UT Austin, and I finally graduated with a BA in drama, and I'm like, great, now I'm in debt, and I'm waiting tables again. What?
Right.
Right. And so I'm traveling, I'm doing theater, but I kept thinking, I want to go to New York. I want to go to New York. And then I had done this crazy thing called the Landmark Forum, and it helped me forgive my family, and there was a huge weight that was lifted. And then I had this community of people going, when are you moving? What's your dream? How's your dream coming? Community, right? And so this group of people really helped me get there. And as I was moving to New York City, I also got sober, which I would never recommend, but that's how I did it. And, they were like, don't change anything. And I was like, oh my God, I had to keep changing everything. I had to keep temping and moving. And I had this sweet little life in Austin. And now I'm in this huge city. It's so expensive. And so people kept saying, you're really funny. And I was like, what do you mean? Because I was so stressed out, right? Like, you're like, how much is rent? And, and I had casting directors that were like, you need to lighten up. And the agents would say, you should take improv. And somebody else would say, you got to laugh, Elaine. You're not breathing. it was just a lot the first couple of years. So people kept saying, you've got to take comedy. So finally, I was like, okay, I'm listening. So I take this class, and I'm horrible, Matt. Like,
Nope.
It's one thing to do musical theater and Neil Simon, right?
Right.
Spontaneous. It's a whole other thing to do jokes on demand, right? And so I'm coming home from class. I'm crying into my ice cream. I'm like, I can't do it. So I thought, just finish the darn class. Just go to the showcase. Just don't expect any laughs. Just think of it as a monologue. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to finish this thing. So as I'm getting to the dysfunctional family stuff, people are howling. They're bent over laughing. And I'm like, my friend, I wish I had taped it, because my friend said I would look sort of so surprised, right? So, and I realized I had that light bulb moment. Oh my God, I'm supposed to help people. I'm supposed to help people who maybe won't go to therapy or the forum or whatever. And my life made sense, because there had been a lot of trauma growing up. And then in my 20s, I had continued. We vibe with whatever we grew up with, right? And so I was like, wow. And that's when I started doing life coach training and working on my professional speaking stuff. So it all kind of started with that moment in the comedy club. Like, oh my gosh. So that's how I fell into comedy.
Wow. And while you were in New York, I saw that you, and have heard, the up-and-coming star of the New York City Comedy Underground.
There was a New York Underground Comedy Festival. I mean, that was a couple years ago. But, I got to tour nationally. I got to perform in Calgary and Sydney. And I told jokes on a cruise in Mexico. So right now it's 43 states and 4 countries. I'm going for all 50.
Okay. And all continents, all countries? Or just...
That would be so fun, except maybe not Antarctica, because,
There we go.
The seals don't laugh.
And the penguins would probably just clap a little bit if they could. Well, that's fantastic. So besides comedy, you are a speaker.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. How did you get involved in speaking?
Well, it's so funny how I feel like everything's been like a happy accident, sort of. So, I'm running around New York City. I'm going to auditions. I'm doing comedy shows, but you're always searching for something where you can get paid. And I had this friend, and she was like, I just started an agency and I need a female on my roster. Come do comedy at the colleges. And I was like, yes. And luckily my friends were like, no, you're not ready, because the college market's very competitive. And so I would have been auditioning against people who've been on The Tonight Show 10 times, And so they said, Elaine, you're not ready. You're funny, but you're not, but didn't you have a bunch of addictions? And I was like, yeah. So they were like, come in as the funny eating disorder girl. And so I came in as a funny lecturer, which was really brilliant. It was, it was other people's ideas, but because the bar was lower. They didn't expect me to be funny. And I was talking about emotional eating, which we all know. Everybody knows how to diet and work out. That's not the issue. It's the emotional eating part. And I was using humor to keep the 18-year-olds engaged. And so my first showcase, I booked 14 colleges, and I was like, I'm in. But then, of course, my agent changed, things happened. But that's how I fell into it. And then my next agent was like, can you talk about drug and alcohol? And I was like, yeah, I had all the addictions, And then my last agent was like, can you talk about sexual assault? And I was like, because it was part of my story, but I was, this is before Me Too was so mainstream. And so I was like, let me just meditate on that. But I thought, if I can save one person from the shame and the addiction and all the things I went through, I have to. And so I was speaking about assault prevention and awareness and response way before Me Too was so mainstream, which was challenging, But I'm glad I got to do it because I know I saved lives. I know one girl told me I helped her from committing suicide. Another girl told me that she stopped cutting because of me. I was always trying to stay connected and getting some of the kids back into therapy. And, you only get an hour.
Yeah.
So there was always more I wanted to do, but.
Help me understand, Elaine, how do you get to a point where you can open up and be vulnerable about things that are traumatic and heavy in your life? Because there aren't a lot of people that I know of that want to speak freely about those topics. Yeah. So how did you get to that place?
Well, I think it's been an evolution. My parents divorced when I was 4, and this was the 70s. Now everybody gets divorced, right? But at the time in my brain, something was wrong with me, my family. And so luckily though, I had the experience of draw a picture of your family, feeling awkward, trying to talk to people, but it was good training. And then luckily, landmark education saved my life. I did the forum, then I did some of their other curriculum, and then I did this leadership program. And that one of the things is call your coach. If you're messed up, call your coach. If you're happy, call your coach. So I got trained, honor your word, and so I'm so grateful. So that was part of the evolution. And then one of the gifts of 12-step is you go to these meetings and you really talk. Hopefully you talk about what's really going on. And there is something so healing in the group dynamic and people being able to identify. And so that has been an evolution. I'm 22 and a half years sober. So, it's been sort of a process. But I always, if I'm asked, I try to be as open and vulnerable because I know it helps people. And I feel like I don't have kids. This is one of the ways I give back. So I speak for AA when they ask me to. I speak at other places when they ask me to because I want to use my story for good. That's one of my mottos. So,
well, bless you for doing that. that you are someone who has the ability. We all have the ability to share our stories, but you have developed that skill and that craft to share it in an effective way. Okay, y'all, that's a wrap. Stay tuned next week for part 2 of Elaine's story. You don't want to miss it. Also, remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel.
If you'd like to contact Matt or know a fascinating person with an inspiring story that would make a great guest, reach out to the show at themattHiltonshow@gmail.com.